Picture this. You're young, in your bed, up way past your curfew, tucked under the covers trying to fall asleep, but you can't. Your mind is haunted by images and ideas that just won't go away. Things that are horrifying to your little brain. You know they're not real, and that they can't get you, but you still lie down, paralyzed by fear. You try to think about something, anything else, but you just keep going back to it, like it has this hold on you, and you can't do anything about it. Nothing to plug yourself into or read to distract from it. No books or DS past your bedtime. You're trapped. What kind of specter, what such phantasm has tied itself to your young psyche? What is the form of this impalpable beast that torments you so? A Photoshop picture of Mickey Mouse, but like he has human eyeballs and there's blood all around him. The internet, a worldwide hub of information where people can do and say pretty much whatever. To a young, naive kid, it can be a lot of fun, but you better be careful. And you know, kids, a morbid curiosity gets the better of us. Sometimes you'd find things you weren't supposed to see, or click on something innocent only to find out it's anything but.
Naked ladies, no!
My generation is very much proof that giving kids unrestricted internet access isn't a good idea. For every fun or innocent website, or YouTube video, or meme, there's hundreds of others that traumatized us as kids. Believe it or not, that's what we're talking about today. Quote-unquote childhood trauma videos have been a thing for a while, and I've already done 2 this season. While I was writing these, I knew for a fact that if I wanted to cover scary online media, it would have to be its own separate video. There's so much to talk about. It is the World Wide Web after all. The World Wide Web of scares. Ooh. Today, we're going to be going over disturbing animations, creepypastas, and all manner of unnerving YouTube videos. 2 things before we start. As you guessed, we're going to be talking about stuff like Jeff and Smile Dog, and all those creepy images, Russian sleep experiment, a Hanna-Barbera's Hennicide, just letting people know if those are triggering to anybody. We're also going to be talking about Squidwards and mouse.avi, you know, and a ton of other stuff like that, so just big trigger warning from across the board. And 2, do you want to help me out on YouTube? Why not become a channel member? It really helps me out during this time in my life, and I'd appreciate it a ton. Members get custom emoji, as well as special recognition in comments and live streams. So, if that sounds cool to you, I'd consider pledging. Now, on to the actual video. My first experience with web-based scary media doesn't actually come from a creepypasta or anything like that. The first time something online scared me was all the way back in 2007 or 2008 with the original Disney Haunted Mansion website. There are like no images of this that you can find, but trust me, this was a thing. On it, there were behind the scenes videos and footage of the ride and how everything worked, and as a kid, it was really fascinating, but also kind of creepy. The stretching room, the ghost ball, Madame Leota, the ghost bride, all really creeped me out. It was all obviously fake and I knew it back then, but it sounded like being there was a truly haunting experience. It would creep me out, but for some reason I couldn't stop watching these 4 or 5 videos that they had up. I don't know, like I said in the intro, it was this kind of morbid fascination. These videos had me scared of the dark, on edge, had me turning the corner just to make sure there weren't any ghosts around. I'd keep going back to that old Disney website for a while until, one day, the website was updated, and instead of a hub where I could watch all the usual behind-the-scenes videos, these 2 tall, lanky ghosts appeared. I don't know which characters they were specifically, but I did not care. I know now that it was just a fancy way of welcoming people to the site, but to me, it was a real jump scare. I ran out of the room and never went on that site again, and now I can't find it. It looks like Disney switched the domains for all their amusement park sites, so even if I go on the Wayback Machine, I can't find anything. Is this lost media? Okay. So that's the Haunted Mansion story. Originally, I was gonna put that in the first part of this childhood scary trilogy, but I forgot. Turns out it actually has a better place here than in there. Moving on, we need to talk about YouTube. YouTube is where a lot of my web-based childhood fears come from. When we first got a computer at home, I was told that YouTube was this wild west type site where people would upload all kinds of unsavory media that young me should not be looking at, swearing, violence, and things you can't even imagine. I actually held that perception for a while, and even when I actually started going on there later, I'd find exactly that. Swearing, violence, and yeah, stuff I couldn't even imagine. But it wasn't surprising to me, that's what I was told YouTube was. In other words, I knew what I was in for with stuff like the AVGN, Sonic Paradox, and most My Little Pony parodies. Yeah, while I mainly talk about MLP on this channel, I didn't really interact with a lot of that scary pony stuff. Like, I liked ponies back then, but I knew things like cupcakes or pony.mov would kinda ruin my perception of the show. I was aware they weren't real, but through brony cultural osmosis, I knew they were messed up. I mainly stick to animated games. But I've already gone over all the pony stuff. Let's talk about the other half of Sonic vs. Rainbow Dash. Of course, I mean, the blue guy. The amount of weird pony stuff I found back then while doing an innocent Google search was nothing compared to what I found with Sonic. It was all over the place. The Sonic shorts by Sonic Paradox, like I just mentioned, these would usually just be jokes about Sonic characters getting hurt or doing the nasty or talking about funny adult subject for 10 whole videos, plus some music video collabs with the same humor. That Seaside Hill one, whenever I hear that song, I always instantly think of the lyrics they did for it. I haven't seen it in years, but at this point I still remember, I'm going to use you guys' boxing gloves, shift punch, yeah. Classic stuff. Also, all those weird Sonic sprite animations where they just use text-to-speech and talk, I thought those were so boring. And the gross stuff. Of all the things a kid can look up online, Sonic the Hedgehog has to be the worst. MLP is obviously a close second if I'm gonna bring it up again. I know so many stories of people who just wanted to see ponies on YouTube but instead got greeted with something a little crazy. I guess I was so desensitized to it because of all the Sonic stuff that My Little Ponies swearing and beating each other up wasn't really a surprise. I didn't see much of it, but it still wasn't surprising. The only pony-related thing that actually got to me was a YouTube poop where they play Wake Me Up Inside by Evanescence while a baby G3.5 Scootaloo shows up on screen. Okay, on to more YouTube stuff. Don't hug me, I'm scared is a common one for people to talk about when it comes to traumatic online media. I only saw the first one through a Kids React video when they still had a reputation. It's so cliche at this point to talk about that I'm not really gonna go into it. I mentioned the AVGN before, and while nothing about him scared me, I enjoyed pretty much every episode. The one that bugged me was the Hong Kong 97 review. For those who don't know, Hong Kong 97 is this bootleg SNES game that's meant to be the worst, most offensive game of all time. Back then, there was this weird air of mystery to it that really creeped me out. The never-ending gameplay with that song playing over top, and the end screen that showed an actual intact cadaver. We all know now that the game was made by one guy as a joke, but the way the nerd talked about it in that review made it seem like it was by this mysterious company. It had such a weird feel to it. Now, as soon as I got into YouTube, I got into game reviewers. One that I remember watching all the time back then was Peanut Butter Gamer. Looking back, his videos hold up pretty well, but obviously feel very 2012, 2013. Peanut Butter Gamer, Peebs, PBG, whatever you want to call them, would make silly little reviews and top 10s about video games, like Top 10 Zelda Side Quests, Hey You Pikachu review, Top 10 Suckiest Enemies in Video Games, the worst game I've ever played. One series he did early in his YouTube career was the G-Files. Here he'd go over weird mysteries or Easter eggs in games. For a lot of these, it was my first time hearing about them, and honestly, in so many of these, I had no idea what he was talking about. The ones where he described Zelda quests and characters really had me using my context clues, you feel? Most G-Files videos talk about stuff that's like common knowledge now, like, you know, the Deku Butler in Majora's Mask, creepy Easter eggs in Mario games, things that would be repeated over and over again. Despite the tone of these videos not being creepy at all, they'd still get to me sometimes. The main part that kept me up at night was the intro. It was just a remix of the X-Files theme, but for little baby me, it was still creepy. And the way they'd zoom in on things, yeah, not creepy. But you know what was creepy? Creepy pastas. This is what a lot of you have probably been waiting for. Now, it's really hard to define what a creepypasta is, but I'm sure people know about the big ones. Slender, Jeff the Killer, Smile Dog, Candle Cove, The Rake, The Russian Sleep Experiment, Lost Episodes, all those. In terms of Gen Z nostalgia YouTube videos, there's been a ton that just go over creepypastas, so I'm not gonna get too into the ones that everybody knows, especially since a lot of the popular ones just weren't scary to me at that point. Slenderman, Jeff, Tiki Toby, Alice, Laughing Jack, all the big character creepypastas didn't have an impact on me. Not even Jeff the Killer's doofy looking face got to me. I get why some people didn't like this, but I don't know. It looks too inhuman to be in the Uncanny Valley. Also, another problem with those characters is the lore attached to them. When you turn a horror story into this big universe with all these characters and rules, it loses its impact immediately. That's why the first Nightmare on Elm Street is scary and the rest are not as. By that point too, that was when the whole Jeff the Killer and friends as emo anime characters was a thing. And come on, how do you expect me to think this is scary? But Smile Dog? That did get to me. The story of it cursing you managed to creep me out, and the two images themselves were pretty unnerving, especially the evil demon version. But Sonic.exe, that wasn't scary either. Even back then it was dumb, and there were so many stories that did the whole haunted video game thing better. Tails Doll? The first time I heard about that was in the Sonic Archie comics, and even in those, he's supposed to be creepy, so seeing people turn this into like a real-life creepy thing, it's silly. Of course, I gotta bring up the Lost Episode creepypastas. These were but there were so many of them. They for sure got to me, but never really shook me to my core the way some other ones did. At that time, I knew enough about animation to realize that they weren't real. The scariest thing was some of the ideas, like the Magic School Bus Lost Episode where Arnold gets trapped in space, and also the idea of watching something and then it turning evil. That did make me a little paranoid at some points, but it never happened, so. Now for the time, 1999 had to be one of the best. In terms of Lost Episode creepypastas, it's about this guy who finds out about this kids show he used to watch, and how the guy who ran it, Mr. Bear, did some not so okay things. I like the methodical feel of it, being a lost media story before lost media was a big thing, but there's no twists or turns to the mystery, and you can see everything coming from a mile away. They give a little too much detail to everything, so there's not that air of the unknown to it. The thing that was bad about this was that people would always try and do sequels or spin-offs to it. People besides the original author, of course. They'd add parts with graphic gore, which didn't fit the story at all, made Mr. Bear a devil worshipper in one version. There was one story that was even a sequel to 1999, where a new narrator teams up with some FBI agents or something to take down Mr. Bear 10 years later. You're just ruining it at that point. As it is, 1999 might not hold up in our analog horror world of online scares, but it's probably the most well-written story like this from its time. Second only to Candle Cove. And now I'm not even going to say anything about Candle Cove, it's Candle Cove. They made a TV show out of it. Now, Rap Rat. That was a Lost Episode type story that really got to me, if only for the ghostly curse it would put on people who said the word apparat, which is an anagram of Rap Rat. I said it out loud back then and was terrified, but unfortunately, Rap Rat did not come and take me away. It was a less popular story, so there was a lot less doubt for me that it was real. Rap Rat himself didn't feel like a fictional character, the way Jeff or Slenderman did. It was really ambiguous whether he would actually come and get me or not. There was another story that left me with a similar feeling to Rap Rat, the Ronald McDonald House. Yes, really. So, in real life, the Ronald McDonald House is a charity that provides places to stay for parents when a child needs to be in the hospital for a long time. That's a pretty short definition though, they do some other stuff, and from what I've heard through Quentin reviews, the reason that you don't see Ronald McDonald at any actual McDonald's anymore is because they don't want to associate the charity with unhealthy food. Yeah, I don't know. But what if the reason the two are separated is because the Ronald McDonald House is actually an evil hospital where people dress up as clowns and torture people and suck the life out of them? That's what this story was about. A kid ends up in a similar situation to the movie Holes, where he can either go to jail or some other thing. In this, he goes to the Ronald McDonald House. As soon as he gets there, he sees people dressed up in nurse clown get-ups, and he knows something is up. The rest of the story basically plays out like a Silent Hill game, or the Rainbow Factory My Little Pony creepypasta, where he has to try and find a way out of this evil rundown hospital, while being chased by clowns. Also, I have to mention everything else in this hospital is clown-themed because clowns are scary. As a kid, the imagery in this was so frightening to me that I couldn't even finish it. While the premise is pretty silly, it does have some fun ideas and leaves a lot up to the imagination. It doesn't give you too many answers. Why is this all happening? Is it real? Is it a dream? Where is this? The end especially is pretty surreal, which is something I like a lot. It's a creepy little story. Now, Return to Oz was a neat one. Based on an already pretty creepy movie, This one just had some weird stuff. The part where the kid goes, "eggs are poison," really stuck out to me. A few other less known stories I think deserve a mention. Mr. Widemouth, Mr. Mix, Barney the Dinosaur, the one where the guy watches a news broadcast and the news anchor turns into a puppet. I can't find the name of it, but it was like 2047 or something. Pen Pal, and Normal NSFW for Normal People. It's been said before, but the best creepypastas are the ones that are realistic, but also leave a lot up to the imagination. Something like, again, Candle Cove and The Rake do really well. But if you want some lesser known creepypasta stories that give off that same feeling, I've got a few. Yeah, I know this went from a childhood trauma video to me talking about creepypastas, but come on. It's the Halloween season. Spoilers for both of these stories, so skip to the timestamp shown here. Con Plus. This one's about a weird SNES cartridge that the author found. It's this compilation of 6 different games, and every game he plays gets just a little creepier. Not too creepy, just a little creepy. No blood or anything. All the weird occurrences the narrator describes are weird things that probably could happen in some weird, possibly unlicensed NES game. This one's just creepy enough to feel real, and the camera in the cartridge feels exactly like something that some company would do back then. As someone who knows a lot about old stuff like video games, VHS tapes, all that, it's enjoyable seeing a story written by somebody who knows what they're talking about. Although in the story, this game came out in 1998, it makes sense that it's for the SNES because, you know, it's obscure. Why would anybody care about an SNES game released in 1998? And the narrator says that he can't find anything on it. Same with the camera thing. I don't know, I couldn't see that happening with the N64 or happening earlier with the SNES. It just feels real. Con Plus is pretty underrated. Not as underrated as TSO PUA 1975 or Tsopwa 1975. This one is so cool. It's framed as this document about a weird old TV set which had its own weird shows and channels, and some crazy stuff happens. It actually reminds me a lot of an SCP or something. Sorry to say, but I never did get into SCP. I never liked how, out the gate, I knew it wasn't real. It got rid of all the relatability that creepypastas had. So yeah, spoilers over, Con Plus and TSO PUA 1975. Go check those out. Now, I didn't read most creepypasta stories, I'm sorry to say. I listened to the narration of these all the way back in 2013 or 2014. While the stories aren't scary now, I gotta say, the music they used in the narrations was so effective. Most of it would be from video games or by this one artist called Mew, M-Y-U-U. If you were watching horror or creepypasta videos in the early mid-2010s, look them up. You're bound to recognize some of their work. Songs like A Deep Voice are just so haunting even today, and the version of It's a Small World, it gives me the willies. Those are all staples of creepypasta narrations, but besides those, I'd watch all those top 10 creepypastas videos. Those are where the real big scares come in. Having a story can be scary enough, but having creepy visuals to go alongside it, a voice, sometimes multiple, those always got to me. I'm gonna shout out Hudo Hoodlum's Revenge, who did a lot of creepypasta top 10s back in the day. These were always scary to me with the presentation, but if you want the absolute master of creepypasta countdown videos, you're gonna have to look at another channel. If you recognize this guy, you're in the know. Tat's Top Videos was a channel that would make these long lists of creepypastas, like Top 22 Gaming Creepypastas, Lost Episode Creepypastas, Top 60 Creepypastas in general. Hour-long YouTube videos are a common practice today, but in 2013, this was crazy to think about. In these, you'd have maybe 4 or 5 narrators taking turns describing creepypasta stories. There would be almost no music this time, just the narration and some ambience. The atmosphere these videos have are so good, I'm not even joking. All their delivery gives it the impression of stories being told around a campfire, and the visuals, oh my gosh. Sometimes it would just be gameplay or stock footage, but other times it was some pretty creepy stuff. For the Lost Episodes video, they'd go out of their way to recreate a lot of them, like Happy Happy, and they'd be all blurry and have VHS effects over them. These are absolute classics, but they made me so afraid. About a year ago, they did a new top 30 internet creepypastas video. I watched it now, and it's just not the same. You really can't beat the classics. All those Lost Episode and haunted game stories are a dime a dozen now, but the way they were presented there was great. It made hyper-realistic eyes and needless gore way scarier than they should have been. These creepypasta countdowns in general were the first time I saw some of those awful, creepy images, the scary Squidward, decayed Homer, evil Mickey Mouse with the eyes, that one was the worst, as well as Russian Sleep Experiment and all those. That robot from the intro will live on in my mind forever. You know what? Even this guy was scary. That blunt text-to-speech voice is so unnerving, just with the blank background. Now, countdown videos were the big trend back in the day. It was the popular format for people to get across information. Plus, ranking things is fun. Now, before he was hiring questionable artists to design characters, Danger Dolan used to do a lot of countdowns. A lot of gaming plus other facts. Some were even creepy. Ugh. The top 15 creepy things from kid shows or movies, maybe... I don't remember exactly. That really freaked me out. Yeah, whenever YouTubers would talk about creepy things in old shows or movies and showed the things that would be scary, that would freak me out. Like whenever the Nostalgia Critic talked about Return to Oz. Now, in the online spaces I'm a part of, people like Danger Dolan or Tats aren't that relevant today. They might have stuck around, but they're not really well known among any specific community. At least, you know, what I know. I can't really say that about another YouTuber I watched back then, Blame It on George. While a lot of people know him for the lost media content on his channel, I want to say that he also does pretty good general mystery videos. I feel like those get overlooked, you know? A lot of his early videos have been deleted or unlisted, but the more well-known ones, thankfully, are still up, like the top 20 childhood conspiracy theories. There was one thing in this video that messed with me so bad. Looking back now, it's a pretty standard creepy countdown video with topics like the Ash Coma theory and Courage the Cowardly Dog being a real dog. But the longest segment of the video, where he talks about the Rugrats hallucination theory, was terrifying, if only for the illustrations that were on screen. They're all in this anime style, but it was so unnerving, and they have this one editor, don't show it, of Chucky Finster laying on the floor with his glasses broken and he's leaking ketchup from his arm. Like, what even was that? And there's this one part where they slowly zoom in on this drawing of Angelica. Just a black background, her slowly fading in. The night I watched that video, it was the worst. I've never been able to go to sleep. I'm not kidding you. Rugrats anime Angelica kept me up at night. Like the Tats videos, George's early videos all had this creepy aura to them, with ambient music, and the delivery in these was so matter-of-fact, like it was being read at a funeral. Even though they weren't about anything actually scary, the top 40 Lost Band episodes of kids shows, and the top 20 Lost Kids films, put me on edge in a way I can't describe exactly. I'd be watching them and looking around the corner just to see if anyone was there. You know, after watching a video about the top 20 Lost Kids movies. There are some unlisted videos from him that I remember, like the Disney conspiracies rumored to be true, and the 30 scariest creepypastas. And I of course need to shout out the disturbing kids characters from around the world. In that one, he talked about the Mummenschan's appearance on Sesame Street. The Mummenschan's I kept misremembering as Mummenschanks. And I thought, hey, the word chunks would be a fun YouTube name, and the rest, as they say, is history. This one also features Asi Morso, this Finnish puppet thing. I had a thing for a while where I'd look this guy up on Google Images just to scare myself, and it was like this game where I'd have to stop myself from doing it. While we're on the topic of creepy things you can find on Google Images, I also need to bring up the realistic Bart and Lisa Simpson, not the Miguel Vasquez or Hassan Diva ones. I'm talking about these, the ones where they look at you straight on. Also the Rugrats storyboard jam. Just the image that an actual member of the Rugrats team drew of Tommy seizing on the floor is so uncomfortable. Rat Boy Genius for a bit also scared me just because of the animation style. And those Fox Animation Domination Schoolhouse Rock parodies. If you're not picking up on the political satire in those, you're gonna be pretty scared. Theater. Scare Theater? Now, Scare Theater was another YouTuber I used to watch around 2015. This guy introduced me to so much creepy stuff. I can't really recount it all. I'd say just go and watch some of his videos. Ones I need to bring up are Obey the Walrus, Agamemnon Counterpart, and I Feel Fantastic. This one was not okay. Even if the guy who made this one didn't actually unalive people, this video is so scary. This android just stands there, singing this weird song, and it cuts randomly to a yard? Why does it do that? I know it's unintentional, but to this day, I Feel Fantastic is one of the creepiest videos I've seen on YouTube. And there we have it. That's all the stuff that scared me as a quote-unquote kid. By the time I was watching Scare Theater, I was probably in the 5th grade. Now, creepy videos on YouTube haven't gone away. I still tune into certain channels I mentioned here, and I've seen a lot of other creepy online stuff in recent years. Nothing, though, can match that feeling when you're a kid. And you're just so fascinated by this, but you know you probably shouldn't be watching it because it's gonna make you all creeped out. If you want some current creepy internet media, you know where to look. There are some pretty creepy icebergs out there, like the original Mario 64 one, and there's so many analog horror and ARG videos now on YouTube. I'm even starting one, so check that out, hashtag shameless plug. I hope you all enjoyed this little childhood trauma thing. It's always something I've wanted to do whenever I pictured myself with the YouTube channel, and I know it's gonna be good to have some of my old childhood fears vindicated by you guys, and since it's the end, I just want to thank everyone who stuck it out through this video. I get a little self-conscious about saying this because it's a really typical YouTube thing, but I really appreciate the support you guys have given me in the past few months, and even the past few years. We're hitting some really awesome milestones. Of course, I just want to give a special shout out to all my Yak Tier supporters from my Patreon. Shade Walker, Knife Girl, The Blazing Pegasus, Technicolor, Jack Getchman, Paisley, Trixie Best, No, Yak Best, Olive, SR Nano, Allison Madden, Alex Kincaid, Johnny Punchfist, A Kawaii Dragon, Keaton Cryer, Cascadiarch, Bad Bessie, Damian, Marshmallow, and Goose Nerd. I can't think of a better outro, so until next time, goodbye, and happy Halloween.